am so glad that we started with a prayer for our country. And I never, when I set the date, I didn't even think this was the day that the Electoral College would be voting, and it's in, it's January 6th. It's not even like the first Tuesday, it's January 6th. So we've really witnessed quite just, what we're witnessing is history, and it's gonna play out. I think I will start with my polls, and then I want and take your time, and you can just hit the one. I have a couple of questions. What would you like to discuss? You can pick more than one. I'm willing, to read some articles. And where do you get your news from?
Current events in Israel, Jewish events in the United States, and hot topics as they come up.
Yeah.
I think that's what
you can pick all three, because I'll probably be doing all three.
I get my news from the television, social media.
News from magazines, magazines.
Oh, you can, well, yeah. I didn't even think of that.
The Week magazine is.
I get it both, newspapers and TV, but I put.
You don't like to be on video.
Okay.
I have it on mute now. You will not believe what is going on. I mean, it's like a third world country.
I know it is. I know it. It's really more than I can bear. All right.
They're now inside the Senate.
I know. I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to share the results. I'm going to take a picture of the results. And then, yeah, this is, very interesting group we have. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing, and we're good. Okay. Hi, Marilyn.
Hi.
We started with a prayer for our country.
Oh,
So my daughter lives in DC.
Daughter does too.
Yeah. And
my son and daughter-in-law and baby do too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And my granddaughter is in daycare. My 9-month-old granddaughter is in daycare near Capitol Hill, because the staffers, my son-in-law works for the DCCC, and the staffers take their babies. So I texted Lital, it was an hour ago, and I said, are you watching what's happening? Is Esme is my grand, go pick her up. They went to go pick her up, and as they were going to pick her up, the director sent out an email, come pick up your children.
wow.
So I'll start at the end. She's fine.
Right.
And they got back home, but it's terrible. And wait, oops, some more people are coming in. I'll get
Well,
a
the
hold.
interesting is they're messaging Trump and saying, Trump, please stop this. You're the only one that this group will listen to, your
Right.
supporters.
Right.
So they're waiting to hear from him, but good luck.
Yeah.
Well, the other day when Pence was doing a rally, and the mob was yelling, stop the steal, stop the steal. And he just stood there smirking. Why didn't he say that the election was not stolen? It was a fair and free election.
Right.
President-elect Joe Biden is the legitimate 46th president of the United States, and we need to support this president. Why doesn't any decent Republican stand up and say that to that mob, and that will stop them, because they believe all that stuff that they're hearing.
So a couple of things. One thing that my son-in-law said, and I don't think they're letting this out, is that there's obviously armed guards there, but there was shooting in the Senate. And so the armed guards went in, and now there was shooting there. And they have gas masks because of the tear gas. And I think, Trump had a little tweet saying, be peaceful. He didn't say leave. And I think it's past that. I think it is just it's gone past, it's gone past anything that, I'm afraid, when I get back on, at 3 o'clock, when we get back on, I'm afraid to see what is happening there. My kids live in Anacostia, which is in the city. They said that, their neighborhood is peaceful, but they're close enough to the Capitol that they can hear ambulances and everything going and sirens. I said, well, I hope so. They need to send the National Guard, they need to
Right.
send. And the fascinating thing is that I was also watching the process, and Mitch McConnell and what's his name, Toomey, had just gotten up and said, stop this. This is an election. Biden won. Toomey said, I didn't vote for him, but we live in a democracy. You have to, you have to abide by the Constitution. And then now, I don't know how they're going to they still have to go through and count the votes and do all of that.
Yesterday, the National Guard was called up, but my understanding as of yesterday was they were going to be unarmed. Maybe now that's changed.
Yeah,
I just saw 2 people with guns in the Senate. There's an
Yeah.
armed standoff. I'm sorry, I gotta go watch television.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
go. I
I
understand.
got you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Bye.
I'm
Bye,
gonna send
bye.
you, I'll send you some
Okay,
articles.
okay, thanks.
I certainly get it. There's so much going on. I mean, I had a ton of articles to share with you. One of them from the tablet saying, it's a Jewish value to concede. And, by Trump not having conceded
That
for,
started this whole thing.
and that, he has to, concede. And, Mitch McConnell got up and said something, right? Ted Cruz, and right after him, Ted Cruz says, we have to, we need, and somebody caught him on Twitter saying, because he said, we need to let the viewers, not the voters, the viewers, have, justice and so on and so forth. And
Ted Cruz just said they have to stop.
oh, he did?
That's nice of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Too little, too late.
Yeah.
Yep.
Too little, too late. So it's again, we're watching this all unfold. One of the things that I wanted to talk about today, and we can still, whatever you want to talk about, I'll next week, we'll have a week of looking back of what happened today, was Trump's pardons. He has pardoned so many people, and one of them, and the two that for me kind of, one is Jonathan Pollard, and the one who, the polar opposite for me is Roger Stone. So again, I was telling my kids, I'm having this class, we'll talk about the pardons. And I said, I'm going to talk about Jonathan Pollard. They go, who's Jonathan Pollard? So just to review, Jonathan Pollard was, he worked in our government and he sold secrets to Israel. And he's been in, jail for 30 years, and he just made it to Israel. I can bring up a couple of things about him. So, just 1 minute here. Let me come back to you. And I can put some of these links in our in our chat box in a second. But this is from Reuters. And they just mentioned 8 of the criminals. Let's see here.
I'm upset by the Blackwater pardons and the message that sends to the world.
Yes.
I just put that in the chat. They're
Yeah.
murderers. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. what's his, Kushner's father? Also,
Right.
Yeah.
he
It's despicable.
despicable. All these people are absolutely despicable. Do you have any compassion for Jonathan Pollard?
No,
No. So I mean, he's got a lot of, he has a lot of homemade support. I will say that straight up. He has, and he's from South Bend, Indiana. And my cousin lived there, and her husband, had worked in Indiana politics, and they're at shul and they're talking to someone, and they said, oh, our son was in government. And my sister said, oh, who's your son? And they said, Jonathan Pollard.
Pollard.
Right. And, she of
no.
course was like,
Uh,
but, it's, I'm just not sure. Oh, here we go. Let me bring this up. So this is the Reuters, 8 Trump associates convicted of crimes. And, Roger Stone. And I get, Pollard was bad. I totally, completely get that. But I don't know, compared to Paul Manafort, compared to even Michael Cohen,
Yeah.
I don't know. Michael Flynn,
Then,
I don't know what to say. I think that, and I know Pollard's Jewish, and listen, a lot of them are Jewish. So that's no excuse for anything. But, and the idea of pardoning people, has, presidents have done this. And I think that, the first person who did it, and of course we all remembers, was when, everyone on this call remembers, when Gerald Ford pardoned Nixon.
right.
That people aren't going to forgive that or talk about that. Elaine, hi, I'm going to change your name just so we know who you are. And Elaine, we started with a prayer for our country, and we talked about what happened. It's what's happening in the Capitol right now, and a few of us have gone off because it's so, it's been a little bit crazy. And I'm sure some people are watching television and trying to just to put this all into some space. Joyce, go ahead.
I have a question, something that a little bit unrelated, but related. Trump was found guilty, and he was in the case for himself, where he was
Impeached.
impeached, of course. Why wasn't he removed? Why didn't that qualify him to be removed from office? Impeachment is a pretty serious offense.
The Senate has to approve, and they're all spineless.
Was that it? That the Senate did not approve to
Yep.
remove him from office? That's the only thing that, okay.
I mean,
I mean,
they didn't even-
impeachment to me is worse than anything than most of the 9 people he's pardoning. I don't think can hold up to an impeachment.
right. So I don't even think they brought it for a vote because they knew the Senate, which was Republican, would knock it down.
No, they did. They did vote. They did bring it for a vote because Romney voted to impeach. He was the only one who did.
Yeah.
But then they said, oh, he learned his lesson. They wouldn't even call witnesses. And
Suzanne Collins.
Right. That's right. And if they had, convicted him, he would never be allowed to run for office again. This would never be happening. He would be gone. I mean, it was just such a terrible judgment.
Yeah, but Marcia, Vanessa, once he's out of office, what he's going to go to jail for was his dealings in New York. He and his son-in-law, they're going to get him for that. So he he's petrified about leaving. He's protected while he's in the White House. But the minute he gets out of the White
Right.
House, you can be sure his dealings in New York is what's going to put him in jail.
You think it'll be pursued and or been able to be proved?
Well,
Because he's such a con man.
Well, I don't know. I know none of us know the end result, but his dealings in New York are
Pretty bad.
enough to
He's gonna have
criminalize him.
the SDNY are gonna have the tax records to go by. He can't
Very
get out of
nice.
that.
There you go.
Right.
There you go.
Well, you know, there were rumors that he was going to that he had a plane ready to escape to Scotland the day before the inauguration, but Scotland won't said that they'll kick him out because they're on lockdown because of the virus, and so they said it's not essential to have to come here to play golf, and so we're not going to let him in here.
Oh, gee.
I tweet and I do get some information, some of my news from social media. And on Twitter, there was a lot of call for the 25th Amendment. And
Yep.
that's, you know, getting out of president because they're crazy. So I'll be fascinated to see if that goes any further than social media. I mean, we're so close. We're so close to having Biden. I just don't know. So you know, you know, we keep saying nothing more can happen. What else can he do? And every day is like, you know, who could have predicted this? Oh my goodness, what's happening here? So you know, I don't know what to tell you. And you know, I think we'll all be watching the news. Obviously, it looks like we definitely have one senator from Georgia. The second senator, John Ossoff, is ahead. Hopefully that will be certified shortly. I believe that it's a renewal of the Black Jewish coalition. And you know, I love both of those senators. You know, the two senators they were running against, you know, we're
not lovable.
They were racists, and they were anti-Semitic. They were supported by anti-Semitic groups.
Yeah. I meant to say at the top of this that, you know, the opinions that I'm offering here are mine, not those of Macomb Sola Lakeside. So, you know, I think that sometimes, you know, I'm not the clergy, I'm not preaching, this is a current events class, so we can, you know, speak and let you know, you can let us know. All right.
Mute everybody.
Yeah, I will. I'm gonna mute everyone, and then if you have a comment, just unmute yourself and or raise your hand or whatever. And I know we're all watching the news. We are all watching the news. So the other, any thoughts about on Georgia or that election or the turning of Georgia purple, as they're saying, or the Jewish Black coalition? You can unmute yourself.
I'll say something.
Yes, go ahead.
I was just thinking today what a miracle it is. Like a couple of years ago, would you believe that Arizona and Georgia would have voted for voted for a Democrat, Joe Biden, and each produced 2 Democrat senators? I mean, you know, and so I was so excited because a friend of mine, when I left from Wilmette, a biking friend, she said, Marcia, how can you go to Arizona? It's a red state. And I said, well, that's my mission, is to turn it blue. And it did. So I think demographics are changing. See, to me, you know, that despicable MAGA, you know, that when I saw who he was picking for his cabinet, you know, in 2016, I was thinking, this is Make America White again. It's like a denial of so many people and the supporters that by 2045, whites will be in the minority. And I think it's a fear that for whatever reason, we don't think that way, but it's scary how many people do think that way. So I think it's just beautiful to see that a Jewish person and a Jewish person, a senator, and a Black senator could have, come together and work together to achieve this result. I think it's just so,
Right.
it's just so wonderful.
And I do believe that what happened in Georgia, we can give thanks, not just to Stacey Abrams, but to her minions and the hard work that she did, and getting the vote out, and it was unbelievable. Again, on social media today, someone said maybe Stacey Abrams has a plan to get the vaccine out. So because again, I believe, ineptitude on the part of the national government, throwing it back to the states, to beleaguered hospitals and medical staff who, can barely get their PPE, their protective equipment. It just is not helping us. So we talked about, I hope that in the future, it's hard to get off of American politics today, but we'll talk a little bit about Israel. And I always caution people, you need to see where you get your news. And I really like Ynet News. I find that they're, not right, not left. You see now they're also talking about the Trump protesters. But they're also they're talking about the vaccine, and they're talking about, and we'll talk more about it in the weeks to come, that they're going to have an election soon. In Israel, they have a Knesset with 120 seats, and you have to have a majority. There's no party that has 60 or 61, so they have to have a coalition. And they couldn't pass a budget, and then they had a vote of no confidence, and then they have to schedule a new election. I think because, and I'm sure you've read in the newspapers, Israel has over 10% of its population inoculated. I'm 61. I have a lot of friends in Israel, relatives. They're all inoculated. My friends my age, all inoculated. It's over 60, and they have the infrastructure. They have the army. It's smaller, socialized medicine. I get it. But it's really something to, I certainly admire it. I am not a fan of the current administration, Benjamin Netanyahu, but I think this is going to help him get reelected because, the pandemic is the biggest story. Now, going back to the Capitol. Now, I was watching it. None of those protesters had masks on. The police had masks on. When they showed the Senate, when they showed Congress, they all had masks on, but none of these protesters have masks. And, when they stormed in, I'm sure we're going to, Abby, I'm going to put the Ynet, I'll put it in the chat. So you can, that's where I check my sources. Here we go. I think it's a Ynet News, I think is, this is what people in Israel, this is what they check. They have different papers there, Haaretz, the Jerusalem Post. They all have different bends, not bends. What's the word? So, but Ynet News, I find is, it's not you can't find anything that's totally, completely apolitical. But at least I feel that this is somewhere in the not political sphere. And I recommend it. I mean, the other, and we can talk about if people like to listen to podcasts. I would like to send out, a couple articles a week that you can pre-read and we can talk about, so that we can all have the same information. So, or maybe even some short videos that we can then talk about it. The class is once a week. On Tuesdays, 7 more times. It's for 8 weeks. Which should, for goodness sakes, take us into Biden's administration, all things being equal here. Ynet, it's Israel. Ynet is from Israel, but it's in English. You probably could get it in Hebrew there too. Jill, can you tell me your last name? You can unmute.
Baker.
Oh, well, that was easy. Okay, and we had another Suzanne on. She left. Okay, so we'll because I can send out articles, and so you can look at that. So other things I wanted to show you. You saw the Ynet news. Other places, certainly where I look, is to the Union for Reform Judaism. So the URJ has a lot of different educations and different emails. This one was reflecting on 2020 in Israel and looking to the future. And if you see, it's by Anat Hoffman, and she's the executive director of the Israel Religious Action Center. She was also the chairman of Women of the Wall. So the women who go to the wall and pray and have sometimes had terrible violence. So I feel confident when I read those articles and put those articles out there, and I will put this one in the chat too. I feel confident that they're going to represent me as a reform women. I feel confident that I'm not going to have to strike out because they're Orthodox or they're only men, or that they're not going to reflect my values. That's what it is. And I think that hopefully we're going to be able to look at the news events through Jewish values. And what does this mean to us? I've seen many of your faces in our Tikkun Olam, our civic engagement. We worked very hard to get the vote out. Obviously, we didn't say who to vote for, none of that. But I think that social action is a pillar in Judaism, in our country, and in our community at Solel, at Makom Solel Lakeside. Both legacy congregations had very strong Tikkun Olam activities, committees, and we're continuing with that. And I hope that we can look at some of this as we go forward in this class to see what types of things would we want to understand more, read about more, so that we have a better understanding and are able to do something. I think the postcard writing, I have a friend in Georgia, a Jewish educator, and she said that she was, getting postcards, emails, phone calls, like all day, and she said, most of my friends were very committed. Yes, we're voting. We get it. But obviously, I think all of that helped get the vote out. I personally did phone banking in Wisconsin. Now, the Religious Action Center did a more non-denomination, not non-denominational, what's the word? It was, when they did phone banking, they just encouraged people to vote. And when I did it, full transparency, we were urging people to vote for Democrats. It was frightening sometimes to call Wisconsin, and we were calling in Green Bay, to hear the anger. When, I started straight off, I'm from the Democratic Party, because let them hang up on me. I don't need them to, wade in for 3 lines and then harangue me. But, and most of the anger were men. There was, listen, I'm sure tons of women hung up on me too, but it was the men who took their anger out. And I knew there'd be plenty of people to phone bank in Georgia, but I was a little teeny traumatized by some of what people would say when you would call. And I think this is how they do polls and how they get their information for polls. I very rarely answer my home line, and my home line, the only reason we have a landline, it's tied to our internet. But I think because polling still depends on landlines, not cell phones, doesn't have a good way of, getting to people, and where are they? And I think it underestimates, especially the fraction of our country who, don't answer the phone, and, or the Republicans or the independents. So I think that the whole idea of polling is something that we're going to have to, I think they're going to have to reimagine and look into. Again, my son-in-law works for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, and he is the head of the communications. And whatever a congressman says, he's gone through it, he's looked it over, and he depends on polling to tell these congressmen what to say. If he said straight up, don't say defund the police. That's not a popular pillar to stand on. You need to, we need education in the police department and things like that. What are your thoughts on polling? You can unmute yourself and tell me. Do you think that we can depend on polling in the future? Evie, you're muted. Unmute.
To be honest, I don't participate.
Yeah.
I don't like to have to think on the spot. If I had a question that I had time to give some thought to, so I just don't answer the phone calls. So our call blocker is there, but we just don't pick it up if we don't recognize. And and I feel badly for the people that are polling. I put myself in their place and said, but I just don't do it. And on the flip side, if all of a sudden I feel that I'm in a snarky mood, I end up playing with them, and that's not fair either. So I just avoid it.
Yeah, I think many people are doing that. Marilyn, what do you think? You need to unmute too.
I'm not real comfortable when they call me on the phone to give anybody information to this, the way the world is today. So regardless of what I've decided for my own personal vote, I sort of like to keep that to myself and not just share it with a strange voice. But I do understand that they have to do that to get statistics. So it is as Evie says, it is a problem. When my nephew ran for state's attorney, I stood at Hawthorne Shopping Center for hours, stopping people, talking to strangers, passing out literature, going from door to door. I couldn't believe it was me. He was so happy and so proud of me, and he won. And he's a judge now, and Judge Shames. I'm very proud of him.
As well, you should be.
Yeah, thank you. But so I can understand the other side, but I don't know what the future is going to bring with that, with the change in the world today. It's changed so much. I'm not sure what they're going to be doing about polling and statistics. The other thing is when I saw the Trump rally in Georgia and the helicopter landed and Trump comes out with all of the people on the helicopter with the security guys wearing masks and nobody else that came out of that helicopter. And the crowd screaming, yelling, one person on top of another. You could see red hats, but you couldn't see masks. It was so ridiculous. Thousands of people screaming on top of each other, sharing COVID. And they're just as crazy. I mean, to find these crazy people that believe in all this is amazing to me in itself. Where do they find all these crazies?
Joyce.
This was going to say, one of the things that I found terribly annoying too, by phone call or by mail in many cases, or by computer, is that most of the people calling with questions about your preferences or such always conclude with make a donation. There's always at the bottom to donate. And that annoys me because granted donations are important, but that should not be a part of the question. And I just tune it out.
Yeah. And once you get on those mailing lists,
You're on forever.
you're on. That's it. Marcia Rosenbaum.
Yeah, I kind of agree with both Joyce and Evie because I was getting not phone calls because nobody knows about my landline and I never give it out. Once I moved, because in Illinois, I was blocking. I had 150 blocks and I still couldn't keep up with and I had no more, I had all the blockers and it didn't matter. But here it's not as bad. So, but I was getting a lot of texts and I mostly ignored or blocked them. Because I just found it very annoying. And I agree, I don't like to necessarily share, to me, that's very personal. It's that voting is private. So I don't know. And I think a lot of people feel that way. And that's why a lot of time polls are inaccurate. So, I just wanted to share one disturbing poll. Speaking of polls, that they were taking polls of what people thought were the issues in Georgia, and they polled a great many of Georgia Republican voters. And the top 3 issues, they said, of Biden's agenda that they were against were environmental protections, healthcare, and civil rights. I mean, so that is very disturbing, I think.
I completely agree with you. I listen to The Daily, which is a half-hour podcast every day from the New York Times. And today was all about that they won Georgia and, it was very happy. And I was exercising and so I started listening to yesterday's. And in yesterday's, they were talking about the Republican strategy in Georgia. And one of the most, it was so disturbing to hear that they were probably at that rally in Georgia, and they were talking to people. The election was rigged. It's fake. And we can't let it go to the Democrats. Well, what will happen if it goes to the Democrats? They're communists, they're Marxists, they're socialists. And the whole I don't know what they think that that means, because I assume that if they're unemployed, that they'd want that 2,000 COVID relief money. I assume they want health care, can never assume, but that has always been very troubling to me. I have a good friend, a friend, and she lives in Florida now, and I'm sure she voted for Trump. She was very Republican, and back in the day, George Bush makes him look like a moderate. But she lost her job and she needed health care. And she, went on Obamacare, or, she went on the Affordable Care Act. And, I wanted to call her up and say, hey, I thought you didn't like that. Hey, and so I don't even think they know what they're talking about sometimes. And how do we get out the message? How can we have conversation? How can we have conversation? That's my question.
I agree. And what about Social Security? And then when you're older, Medicare. And then, what boggles my mind? This president and his enablers are guilty of creeping authoritarianism. Is that better than Social Security and Medicare? I mean, this was bordering on fascism. The stuff, firing everybody that disagreed with him, hijacking the post office, hijacking the ballot, totally trashing the balance of power, and then thus the Constitution. Is that better? I agree with you, and I don't understand the reasoning.
You're right. But how can we have discussions? How can we discuss? And there's plenty of Jews in, on the North Shore of Chicago, who voted for Trump. Whether they be one issue, look what he did for Israel, or they're voting their portfolio. My 86-year-old father, who cannot watch Trump on the television anymore, he said, look, my portfolio has gone up. He said, but I'm not going to vote for him. And I think that for some people, it comes, that's a black and white issue. He's going to make my portfolio. But how can we talk to these people? You see more and more Republicans with this whole thing about certifying the vote. All the past attorney generals or the defense, they all came out yesterday, Republican and Democratic, saying this is pro forma. This is according to the Constitution. It has to be done. And maybe Abby, what's happening on the television? Any updates for us?
Trump has agreed to send in the National Guard.
Well, somebody got shot in the Capitol.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Virginia's sending in its National Guard.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But the Secret Service has been really good, and they said that Nancy Pelosi is safe. So that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. But what about the rest of them? They're all there.
They're all
I
there.
mean, yeah, well, they're all on lockdown. So that, yeah, apparently they're all okay. And they're trying to keep they're basically storming the Capitol, and they're trying to keep the protesters at bay. And, people were objecting to the peaceful marches of Black Lives Matter. Look at this.
Yeah.
Look at this.
I saw people with batons, like big baseball bats. And
my answer to someone, well, see, too, it would get too too combative. That's why it's hard. It's hard for me, because I don't understand how your portfolio is more important than the cruelty at the border. I mean, that there is no American that should stand up for that, stand for that. The caging of children and ripping them from their mothers, babies. To me, that would be a deal break. That would be a non-starter. How can you support an administration that that did that, that does that. Oh, and what about the unnecessary hysterectomy? What we have done to people, and to me, they're Americans. If they're living in America, working in America, paying taxes in America, being the essential workers with their lives on the line, they're Americans. So and I just don't understand how people can be okay with that. I'm sorry, I get really passionate about things like that. And all of the racist stuff, I mean, they're coming to get your neighborhoods, they're coming to your suburbs, and they're gonna, the other. I mean, how could people just let that go in one ear and out the other and say, oh, well, I like my stock holdings or something. I don't understand how that,
Right.
to me, that is so un-American. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
No, I mean, Marcia, I am with you on this. I think that when Trump descended the elevator, when he started running for president and called all Mexicans rapists,
Yeah,
you would think that it should have stopped there. I mean,
you would think. What about birther? It started with the birther,
oh yeah,
and they still elected him.
right. And so I'm just not sure. Well, I mean, how we got to this place. If you can go and see what Mitch McConnell say. I've never said this, but he did come out and say, this is the will of the voters. We have to respect it.
Yes, finally.
Took them long enough.
Yeah, finally.
And I follow Michael Beschloss, who's written some great books.
I love him.
Yes, I really like him too. And he said, why couldn't he have started like this in 2016 instead of, waiting until 2021 to come out and say that? And it's just a sad state of affairs.
Well, all these people that are paying attention to any one single issue that's so important to them, they're not getting the fact that there's a much bigger issue called democracy that's at stake here.
Yeah.
Right. That's being trashed every day.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Biden has a lot to do when he gets in. Oh, that's the other thing I was going to tell everybody. I hope you've seen that he's appointed Merrick Garland Attorney General.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And how is it ironic? What's the adjective if he's the one who, persecutes or not, who, would try Trump or any of those guys? I mean, it's really Mitch McConnell who shut him down when Obama nominated him. But and having the two Democratic senators from Georgia, I think Biden will be able to get his
Agenda.
Yeah.
His agenda done, get things passed.
And don't forget, it wasn't just Garland. He blocked Obama's nominating any judges, 200 judges. So Trump got to do it all. They're all on the Federalist list, and about 80% of them are deemed unqualified by the ABA. I mean, there's certain damage that it's done that it's going to take decades to undo.
Decades.
So, yeah.
Decades. We were all at the Rosh Hashanah table when we heard that Ruth Bader Ginsburg died. And my husband is a lawyer, and he was, I mean, we were all saddened and shocked, and we knew she was sick, but he was so angry. He said, this is going to affect us for years and years and years to come.
Oh,
And, we knew they were going to push it through. Now, I will give props to the Supreme Court that they didn't listen to any of these, frivolous, time-consuming court cases about the election. And I believe that Trump is impaired. If you had a loved one, my parents are still that age, if my parents acted that way, I would say, well, maybe it's time for the, assistant, but I don't know. I'd at least take away the keys. So, and this man, has his finger on the, on the nuclear codes. So wait a minute, right. One thing I do, and this is from, let me see where this is from. This is from the foreword. And sometimes, again, full transparency, the foreword is a little right-leaning for me, but political concession is a Jewish value. We know abandoning it can be deadly. And it's dated today. So you know, wait, I have to, somebody, I can hear someone here.
This is like yours? Yeah, you saw.
I'm just muting people. Okay. And so I think that this, you know, talks about, you know, people humoring Trump, and since we're on one screen, by a show of hands, does anyone think he'll go to the inauguration? No. And I think that is, and we've known it, and it's sad. I'm surprised he came back from Mar-a-Lago, but now, after seeing what he inspired today, I think that's why he came back.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Oh, he knew about it.
Fight this right.
Well,
Oh,
can you
yeah.
imagine him inviting Biden for coffee? You know, that's tradition, the way Obama invited him, and riding in the limousine together. I mean, you can't, you know, I think he's going to try to flee the country. I know.
And I think about our standing in the eyes of the world.
I was just
And
saying that.
I've seen people joking, but you know, what does Putin think about all this? He probably, well, I engineered this, and I don't know what to say.
Yeah, all of the countries, I mean, China and North Korea, and I mean, this is such a mess.
Yeah, it's a very big mess. We only have a couple minutes left. I know I'm going to go back to CNN. I might even see what Fox is saying. I can't watch Fox a lot, but they have to be covering, and this is just terrible.
Yeah.
What is happening right now? You know, feel free to get a hold of me if you have, if there's something specific you'd like to talk about. You know, I have our poll. I'll be sending out articles that we can talk and discuss. It's great seeing everyone. Any last questions or comments?
Oh, can I just say one quick thing?
Yes, Mark,
You know, I had said to someone, I'm so scared about January 6th. I'm afraid they're going to blow up Washington, D.C. And someone said, oh, no. Well, they just found an explosive device on Capitol Hill grounds. I mean, it's unreal.
It's unreal. And well, listen, we're going to watch television now. I wonder what Michael Moore has to say. You know, what are the pundits this evening going to say? I've always been attracted to the news, and I'll be attracted even more this week, and trying next week to bring you a look at current events through Jewish eyes, with Jewish values. And hopefully I'll see you at some of the other things this week. And any questions, email me. And it's just great to see everyone.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Thanks.
It's so timely.
Prayer.
So timely for you to have this class at this moment in time.
I know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.